Welcome to the Honest Media. Today is February 8th, 2018, not 17. We've got a fun show for you today. We're going to discuss what our station right here, KGPT 26, is doing for the Kansas Republican Party inaugural gubernatorial debate. That's a mouthful. We've also got some news about the Trump administration, what's happening on the national level, and later in the show we're going to be joined by Dan Lyman of Infowars.com to break down the latest happenings globally and here in the United States as well. So Craig, how are you this week, buddy?
Pretty good.
Well, good. Are you going to help us out for this Kansas GOP debate thing? You know, it's going to be huge. Have you heard about it?
I have.
So what we're going to be doing is we're going to have it live here in Wichita, Kansas, right here on KGPT 26. But it's also going to be on Facebook. It's also going to be in Western Kansas on KDGL 23. It's also going to be in Topeka and Kansas City on TV 25. It's also going to be on our good friends KQAM Radio 1480 here. They're also FM on 102.5, and they have a station out in Western Kansas. So this thing is going to be all across the state.
That was a lot of call signs to remember.
Thank you. I've dedicated a lot of time into getting all this nailed down.
Yeah.
It is not easy.
Well, in words of Joe Biden, it sounds like a big effing deal. So I will be there.
Well, that's exciting stuff. So you can see Craig and myself there. It's going to be at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in downtown Wichita. February 17th is the date at 6 p.m. You can come in, check it out. We're going to be broadcasting at 6 p.m. We have Andy Hoosier from KQAM and Bob Weeks from right here at KGPT. They're going to be delivering commentary, having interviews with politicians, people attending the event, that type of thing. The actual debate starts at 7:30. And it concludes around 9-ish. Then we're going to have some post-debate coverage until 10 o'clock. Craig and I, as we said, will both be there. I'll be running the back end, and Craig will be our muscle. So
I'll
it's
probably just be there drinking. But,
you got to be honest. You got to be honest.
Yes.
So it looks like an exciting affair. So far, we have Chris Kobach, Governor Collier, Hutton. We have so many good candidates. Wink Hartman. I know I'm missing Ken Seltzer, and at least I know I'm missing somebody else. 5 total. In fact, can we just run that video real quick, guys?
Hey, it's Andy Hoosier from The Voice of Reason. Join myself along with Bob Weeks from Wichita Liberty TV as we invite you to tune into the Kansas GOP Governor's Debate Saturday, February 17th. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. as Bob and I have interviews from legislators, attendees, and what they want to expect and see from the debate. The debate itself starts at 7:30, and we'll have the post-debate show directly after with hopefully some one-on-one time from the candidates. It all starts Saturday the 17th at 6 p.m. right here on KGPT 26.
So that's looking like an impressive event. We're going to be covered all over the state, as I said, and on Facebook throughout the world. You know, that's the exciting thing about this new media playground we have here, where it's really the democratization of media. You know, anybody can watch it, anybody can do it, anybody can do about anything nowadays. It's really exciting stuff.
it is.
But you know what else is exciting stuff? And I'm going to go straight into it, Craig. I'm not even going to beat around the bush. Our friend George Soros is in the news again.
I called him last night, actually.
Did you call him last night?
I'm sure they changed the number already.
Yeah, that's right. His house, cell phone, and address were all leaked about a year ago. That was funny stuff. But, you know, George Soros, of course, major financier, we now know, of the Women's March movement. Turns out, you know, this is stuff we all know, but I feel like it's important to get it out there. This is from Breitbart. The title of the article is Real Collusion. Foreign billionaire Soros pumps cash into Brexit reversal campaign.
Oh, that's surprising.
That is a little bit surprising. You know, I thought the British people voted on this. I thought they voted to do it, and now all of a sudden they've got to get a second referendum because the Vote No campaign they basically never went away. For the past couple years, they've just continued saying this was a terrible idea.
Has anything even happened? They haven't Brexited anything.
Well,
so
they
far,
basically told the European Union that they will do whatever they want, and they're going to continue with all the trade agreements. They're even talking about the immigration. I mean, it's got Nigel Farage, of course, Mr. Brexit, shared a stage with President Trump back when he was on the campaign trail. It's got Nigel Farage saying that he's going to go back into politics.
Yeah, he never should have left.
Well, you know, at some point you got to think, man, maybe
he
now
thought
this
he
is
won it. He thought he was going to go enjoy his beer and cigars. And
exactly. Be an actual British gentleman and retire, maybe.
Now he needs to go back to drinking beer and doing politics. That's what he does best.
That's right. So this is just a little bit from the article. George Soros, the billionaire globalist and convicted insider trader, has been unmasked as a major backer behind a campaign to stop Brexit. The Hungarian-American financial speculator, infamous as the man who broke the Bank of England for his role in Black Wednesday in the United Kingdom, has plowed £400,000 into Gina Miller's former Best for Britain campaign, according to the Telegraph. I mean, that is just, does this guy's pit of money have no end?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. It makes you wonder, how many candidates, how many campaigns is he really propping up around the world?
Apparently
it always goes
almost
to
all
him.
of them.
It always goes back to him. You've got to wonder how many people, not just on the national level, but even locally, regionally, whatever, how many people are being sucked into this kind of dragnet? It's shocking. And speaking of leftist crazies, Craig, I think this could work as a good transition here, because guess who is thinking about running on the Democrat side in 2020?
Let's hear it.
Well, first of all, I'd like to remind you that the Obama administration was completely scandal-free. Not a single bad thing happened. Everything that was bad was all just Fox News right-wing conspiracy theories. And as a result, that leaves the door open for Eric Holder to run in 2020.
Yeah, the guy responsible for Fast and Furious.
Isn't that exciting?
I saw that, and they were talking about how great he was. I was like, does nobody remember anything?
Yeah, I guess everybody just kind of forgot the whole Fast and Furious thing. I mean, this guy is, I think it's all been proven, right?
Yeah.
I don't think any of this is hypothetical or allegedly. Maybe I'm wrong.
Nobody got in trouble.
Nobody got in trouble, but, Eric Holder gave guns to the cartel so he could catch them,
Thousands
theoretically?
of guns, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're not talking a couple of pistols here. We're talking like a military's arsenal worth of weapons. This is like, French Revolution type stuff, except instead of giving it to people trying to fight for democracy or a republic or what have you, instead of doing that, we're giving money to drug lords and guns to drug lords.
Yeah, that's what our great CIA has been doing since its existence. So,
it's very true. But of course,
but now the Attorney General did it. So
exactly, and of course, Eric Holder was replaced with Lynch. News just came out about her just recently that she allegedly was offered by Bill Clinton a spot on the Supreme Court if she made the Hillary investigation go away. I would love to see her run for president as well. It's kind of insane the level of just brazenness these people have. This guy, who is a national controversial figure, did something most Americans find appalling, could be president? Totally insane.
They better stick with drooling
Joe Kennedy.
Yep,
That's
Joe
right.
Kennedy.
Drooling Joe is infinitely better when you compared to, at least he hasn't done the crime. He's just ancestral guilt. All right, we've got to take a minute off. When we come back, we'll have Dan Lyman from Infowars here to join us and discuss some of the other latest stories of this week. We're The Honest Media. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Honest Media. I'm Tom Pappert, still here with my trusty co-host, Craig Chrysler. I think we've got Dan Lyman on the line joining us via Skype right now. Dan, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Excellent.
Good to be with you.
Great to have you, Dan. We appreciate you coming on the show. Dan, of course, is a foreign correspondent for Infowars.com, as well as News Wars, kind of another new Infowars web property. Dan, tell us, you just had an article come out. I haven't had a chance to really dig into it yet because it came out right as we were starting the show, but I think the title is Fake News Alert. Soros-funded Russians attend prayer breakfast, but media spins as proof of Russian collusion. And Craig and I were actually just talking about George Soros. He's been funding the new anti-Brexit campaigns in Great Britain. What is he doing in the United States now?
Well, to be honest, I wrote this article an hour or two ago, and then by the time it published, some new information had come out that my editor tacked on there about the Soros stuff.
That's how it
But
happens.
basically, the National Prayer Breakfast was this morning for you guys, this evening for me, and Trump was there, obviously, giving his address. There were close to 4,000 people in attendance, representing 130 different countries and territories around the world. However, apparently this year there were a few more Russians than there were last year. So the media came out. CNN, of course, started this, and then Newsweek ran with it, and the London Evening Standard. And they all said, "Oh, well, there's all these Russians at the event this year," and they tied it together with Trump. The headlines were just crazy. CNN went for a little tamer one, but they got all the propaganda into the piece, and then their satellites ran off with it. So we have Newsweek ran with the headline, "Trump and large Russian delegation attend national prayer breakfast." And Newsweek's was "Influx of Russian leaders set to attend Donald Trump's national prayer breakfast." So obviously they're just, the spin machine is working overtime. They're desperate to spin anything they can. But apparently since I wrote that, more information has come out, and a lot of these people, a lot of them were just kind of, they were just, I guess, a lot of them were younger than 35 years old, just prominent, like doctors and lawyers and maybe some business leaders from Russia. And then the remainder were some, political figures and whatnot. Apparently a lot of them were Soros-funded, Soros-connected, including an ex-porn star that's running against Putin in the election upcoming. So it's the spin is like multi-layered. It's crazy.
Unbelievable. So yeah, that is kind of crazy, Craig, isn't it? Because now they're saying that these people who are, from what you're telling us, Dan, very anti-Putin back in Russia, their mere presence at an event where Donald Trump is in the room is proof that Trump is colluding with Russia. Is that what they expect us to believe?
I think so. I mean, they're just saying all Russians are the same. They must all believe the same thing. They've all colluded with Donald Trump. That's like saying, John Kerry and Pamela Geller were in the same room together, so it's Americans colluding on something. It's really absurd.
Are we living in right now? Because
it feels like the 30s or the 50s or something like that,
50s
doesn't it?
or 60s, yeah.
I mean, totally insane. Now,
wait till CNN gets the picture of Trump eating caviar, then it's all over.
And with a plastic spoon, too. Did you see that article? He got in trouble for serving caviar with a plastic spoon. So, and you're right, this article was just updated. These are some of the totally insane leftist tweets. Trump is now giving his remarks at the National Prayer Breakfast. Just so happens 60 religious and political elites from Russia are in the crowd. 3 times as many last year. Some sanctioned Russians may be in attendance because treason. Hashtag Trump treason. So, I mean, this is totally insane. I mean, we all remember in very, very recent history, Hillary Clinton with the button, the mystical reset button that was going to fix our 80 years of terrible relations with Russia. But there's been a total 180. I mean, the left is totally in love with Russia. Dan, before we, or the left is totally hating Russia, where they used to be in love with it, is where I meant to go with that. But Dan, can you tell us just a little bit about your thoughts here? What on earth is with this new level of Russian obsession? This is just totally insane. This is people that may not have been invited by Trump, may not have been invited by anyone. I think you can just get tickets to the National Prayer Breakfast, and now their mere presence is proof that Trump is a puppet. So what is going on here? How long do they expect us to believe this when we have the Nunes memo and we have more information coming out every day?
Yeah, the people who, the way they're invited is unknown how they compile the guest list, but it's organized by a private organization that has nothing to do with Trump or the Trump administration. But I was thinking back as to what was going on last year. Obviously there are reasons why there are more Russians there this year. So what was going on last year around this time or just prior? And I remembered not too long before, obviously we had a change of administrations just a couple of weeks before, but right before that, the Obama administration was burning down the house on the way out of the door. They had just expelled 35 Russian diplomats with 72 hours notice from 2 different facilities in Maryland and New York. And then they basically seized those properties back from the Russians and said, sorry, you got to go and we're going to take your properties. And then on top of that, they had levied new sanctions on them as well. And that was right at the genesis of this whole Russia collusion thing. So if Russians didn't feel quite as welcome to come to the prayer breakfast last year, I can't imagine why.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I now I would be interested in knowing the Russian attendance for years prior, but I'd also be interested in knowing the Israeli attendance, the Hungarian attendance, the everything else, because I find it very interesting that these people from international or different countries are coming to the United States prayer breakfast. But again, I don't think that is a reason to say collusion. It's totally a next level absurdity.
How many North Koreans were there?
That's a good question too. I mean, it is next level absurdity. Now, Dan, I want to get into, because a lot of our viewers are interested in immigration as it affects the world as a whole. So this previous Tuesday on the 6th, you had an article up, Hungary slams new UN migration treaty, prepares exit negotiations. Now, we're talking about not just Hungary exiting the European Union, but Hungary exiting the United Nations as a whole. Am I correct on that?
Sort of, not quite. They're basically in the process of every year or a couple of years they'll update. They'll kind of tighten down the screws on the globalist agenda, and they'll get everyone to make new agreements. And right now they're in the process of putting together a new treaty on migration that basically calls on all European nations to open the borders wider, to basically lower the criminal penalties for people who enter illegally, and also to make more facilities and resources available to migrants, refugees. So they basically are they want new policies put into place, agreements across the board, all these European countries to basically get on board even further with the migrant agenda. And Hungary has come out of these meetings and these negotiations right now, and they said they're doing exactly the opposite of what our government wants to do, and they're not even listening to us at all. And at this point, what's the point of even negotiating? We're just going to walk away from the table. So that remains to be seen if they actually do or don't do that. But they've come out real hard against the UN, and they've said that basically the blueprint for the plan has been lifted from the George Soros plan for migration, and also it runs parallel to the EU plan. So it's just all these globalist organizations are driving at the same objective: is more migrants, more migrants, more migrants. And if you don't get on board, then you're in trouble.
Well, and I have to point out, of course, George Soros, it was originally from Hungary. I believe he still lives there. He has an international finishing school for young globalists there, I believe. There's all kinds of interesting politics between Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary and George Soros. I think they've tried to kick him out at least once. Dan, we've got to take a quick moment off. Everybody at home, you're watching The Honest Media with Tom Pappert and Craig Chrysler. We'll be back in just a minute to continue discussing these crazy stories that have all broke this week. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Honest Media. I'm still joined by Dan Lyman, foreign correspondent for Infowars.com, Newswars.com. Of course, he's a citizen analyst. If you want to find him on social media, on Facebook, you can actually just type in Dan Lyman. Make sure you get the page that is Citizen Analyst. On Twitter, he is at Citizen Analyst. Strongly recommend you follow this guy. He finds stories that, honestly, I have no idea what his process is or how he manages to hammer them out every single day. I'm frankly kind of in a constant state of amazement with how he manages to do this week after week. But Dan, tell us a little bit more about what's going on this week. If you've got a direction you want to take us, I am interested. Otherwise, you wrote an article about the Eagles that I would like to get into before we let you go today.
Yeah, definitely. I've covered a couple of different Hungary stories because they're really at the epicenter of this kind of war between the East and Central Europe and the West. So there's been a lot of news coming out of there. Orban's he's always saying something interesting. So yesterday, as kind of a follow-up to the prior story regarding the UN, over the weekend, the Prime Minister of Belgium issued, I would say, a pretty stern threat against what's known as the Visegrad Group, and that's Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, the Czech, and they have some allies now in Austria and Croatia. So it's kind of this alliance of countries that are more and more opposed to the policies that Brussels is trying to impose on them. And Hungary and Poland are really the ones that kind of are leading the pack. They're pretty strong economies. They're large countries. Poland is pretty powerful. So Brussels is trying to make an example of these countries. And so the Prime Minister of Belgium, who's essentially an EU stooge, not technically an EU official, but they all work in conjunction there in Brussels. He issued a threat against these countries, saying that that if they won't get on board with basically allowing migrants into their countries, then force might be necessary, according to Viktor Orban. It's unclear as to what kind of force would be applied, but at this point, it's up to the imagination, because it seems like this is going to go down one way or another. And what's interesting is, at the same time, the EU is pushing forward with an EU army, which they're quite proud of. They're funding that. They're starting to get all the groundwork laid for that. And it's being touted as to be used for the common defense. However, when you start threatening use of force and you have a military coming together, then you can start doing the math. It's not like the 20th century wasn't full of situations like this in Europe. Yeah, Fidesz and the presidency of Fidesz, essentially, it's like saying the Republican Party, or like the leadership of the party, or something like that. In many ways, but I think that the plan is derailing as well at the same time. So I think it's just going to be a very interesting time in the coming years for Europe, because you have a lot of these countries that are openly in rebellion against EU policies, and more of them would keep winning elections in that regard. Italy will be the next domino to fall, if I'm not mistaken. They have a surge of populism there. You have two right to center-right groups, two different parties there, the Five Points, and then another one, the Northern League, I believe they're called. And one of the leaders of one of those parties, you have Silvio Berlusconi, is running one of the groups, but he can't technically hold elected office, I think, because of some complications in the past. But then the other guy, this younger guy who could, has said he wants out of the EU, and he called the EU a German currency, and he wants out of the euro as well. So you're going to see a lot of interesting things happening in Italy coming up this year, I think. And then Hungary also has elections very soon as well, and the Fidesz party, who are wildly popular there, are looking to make even stronger gains there. But it's a very hotly contested election because, as we mentioned earlier, Soros is from Hungary. He's pouring all sorts of money into the opponents there. I was actually in Budapest a couple of months ago, and it's amazing. You're going around Budapest, and there are all these billboards that are demonizing George Soros. It has his image. It'll have his candidates like he's the puppet master, and his candidates are underneath as the puppets. Wow. So they're going all out. It's warfare against Soros. Ground zero is Hungary, for sure. Well, to clarify right off the bat too, it is the same with many Western countries where the urban hubs are not nearly as conservative or anti-globalist as the rest of the country, which is, very common even in the United States as well. We have the Democrats are a very urban coastal party. And then in the Czech, Zeman just won the election there. But Prague, which is the most important area for collecting votes, didn't really go his way. He got enough in the rest of the country. So to clarify, the cities still are, they're very multi-culti and all that. But the difference between Western European cities and Central Eastern European cities is safety, for one. In many ways, cleanliness, too. Like Paris, I think is a total dump. London, in many parts, is not somewhere I'd want to spend a lot of time. But you go to places like Budapest and Prague, and they're still recovering from years of communist occupation, and they have a long ways to go. However, you feel very safe walking around these cities at night. There's really no threat when you're there. And in general, you're not seeing burqas in the streets. You're not seeing a lot of hijabs. I spent 2 months in Central Eastern Europe in the spring, and I saw very, very few Muslims there. But if you go to Paris or London, they're absolutely everywhere. You feel like you're in Qatar at times.
Totally insane. And as Prime Minister Orban said, they are fighting for the Christian identity of Hungary. There's a lot of people who say that Muslims, those from the Middle East, especially North Africa, culturally, politically, any way you want to cut it, incompatible with the values of Western Europe, the same values that gave us the Enlightenment, gave us capitalism. Dan, we've got to take another moment off. I think we may be able to snag you for one more segment here. We'll double check that. But if not, we'll get to the Eagles article in our next segment because I want to make sure people get this tie-in. You're watching The Honest Media. Tom Pappert, Craig Chrysler. We'll be back in just a minute with more. Welcome back to The Honest Media. Tom Pappert here with Craig Chrysler. Special guest this week is Infowars foreign correspondent, News Wars foreign correspondent too, Dan Lyman. Dan, you wrote an article earlier this week, I guess it would have had to have been Monday naturally, about the Philadelphia Eagles. And of course we all want to congratulate them for the Super Bowl victory. I would like to express my sincerest condolences to the people of Philadelphia, though, whose city briefly turned into a World War III hellscape. But you had an article earlier this week that I think ties in well with what we were talking about with Hungary's Christian identity. The title of the article was Eagles Credit Binding Force of Christian Faith for Super Bowl Win. Let me try that one more time. Eagles Credit Binding Force of Christian Faith for Super Bowl Win. Team's ethos serves as antidote to NFL's globalist poison. So Dan, you were telling me just a little bit, neither of us are sports fan. Craig over here thinks that sports are the devil, more or less. So tell us a little bit about the Eagles. Give us some background here. Why is this kind of America's new team?
In a way, I think that they just kind of embody something different. And it doesn't apply to all of them. There are definitely some social justice warriors on the team who said they're not going to the White House. There's talk today that they're all boycotting the White House visit. I don't know what's up with that. So, this is a diverse group of a lot of guys. You have a 53-man roster, and then you have the practice squad, coaches, and all that. But the nucleus of the team, you have two quarterbacks. Both are stars now at this point. And then a lot of the star players on the team, including Torrey Smith, wide receiver, the head coach, assistant coach. We have multiple position players on the team that are all Christian guys, and their fellowship is very strong on the team. They've made that very public. They even released an official video from the team's YouTube account, basically saying that their Christian faith is what it keeps the locker room in cohesion. And it should be noted that this year there weren't any kneelers on the Eagles. There were some Black Power fist guys, but in general the team did not behave quite as badly as a lot of these other teams in the NFL. So I think it's just it's refreshing for a lot of people because of how so many of these other teams are operating, how so many of these players are, they're felons, they're violent people. A lot of them are not good role models, but you have these Eagle guys who a lot of them seem like pretty decent guys. And at this point, we'll settle for pretty decent for sure in this sport because we're just tired of the social justice garbage.
Imagine that, the team that worried about playing football instead of kneeling won the whole thing.
Who could have ever thought? And yeah, having some team unity, I can only imagine how hard it must be as a team to really focus and do what you have to do to win a game when you've got this guy with a goofy afro going on about black power and the cops are all racist kneeling down the way from you. You know, it must be extremely distracting. You had one of them, Marcus D. Johnson, tweeted out a picture. It's of him being baptized, actually. You had this in your article. Of course, we'll link to it. First time being baptized. Corporate worship is a beautiful thing. Cleansed and reborn in Jesus' name, wrote Johnson in a tweet that has been liked nearly 20,000 times. And as you said, this is something that is totally, you know, we're used to these guys, Craig, beating up their girlfriends, stealing things, being caught with drugs. And it's not just the NFL. We were
shooting and killing people.
Shooting and killing people. We were joking before we started broadcasting today about Michael Phelps. You know, apparently it's not just football we're talking about here. It's professional athletes as a whole. Would you say, Dan, that as a culture, this kind of team culture is spreading? I know that this is just kind of a, whoa, look at this. The Eagles actually won, and hey, they're not totally terrible people. But do you think that this kind of thing is going to expand, rather? We have Vince McMahon starting the XFL. We have some actual competition. Are we going to see more of this, do you think?
It would be smart if there was. I mean, you can't force guys to be good people, and you definitely can't force them to be Christians. But if you look at specifically, let's look at Tim Tebow, for example. I mean, the guy was demonized by every media outlet and ESPN and all that. And in general, his NFL career was up and down. I don't think he was given a fair chance. I loved watching him play. But even despite all that, his fan base is so massive. People appreciate him because he's a good, decent person who sets a good example. I had the opportunity to go watch him play baseball this summer, and the amount of people there, it set the record for the stadium kind of thing, just like, single A ball. All these people were there in an away game to watch Tim Tebow because they wanted to see him because he's a nice guy, he's a good guy, good, solid, upstanding citizen. I would wager that Christian values are still quite popular in the United States. So if you have teams that have a bunch of good guys like this that are, they're fairly humble and, they're putting out a good message as a team, they're going to be very popular. I'm sure the Eagles are very popular at this point right now, not just for winning the game, but just for being decent people and not being, like I said, horrible social justice warriors.
Right.
That's not who the globalists want to promote, though.
That's
they want
the problem.
Gangster, drug dealer, raper, murderers, just scumbags.
That's a good point. And Craig, what I was thinking when Dan was talking just now is, you're right. These team owners, even the guy's name escapes me right now, the commissioner of the NFL, they can't say you have to be a Christian. Maybe they could, but they're not going to.
Can't even say you can't kneel.
Right. He's not going to suddenly get the backbone to suggest people, keep the baby mama level down to 2. But what they can do is, when you're hiring these people, you can kind of look at their background, and if they are this type of person, and that's not to say that it can't be a person from the bad part of town or whatever. You can't get somebody from Compton. That's just to say that you want to look at people for their personal attributes because they are representing the team. Now, Dan, before we get off this subject, I just have to ask, what did you think of the Super Bowl halftime show? I thought it was surprisingly non-political, but I want to get your input on this.
I have to be totally frank. Here in Switzerland, the Super Bowl started after midnight and probably went into the wee hours, so I didn't get a chance to watch everything beyond some of the commercials afterwards and the highlights. I didn't see the halftime show. I'm sorry to break it to you.
Anything.
You didn't miss much, but I was at least impressed that it was.
I didn't see any political stuff.
Yeah, it was completely apolitical.
But it was Justin Timberlake, so I kind of walked away.
Of course, Craig, you're of the generation that you knew lots of Timberlake fans when you were growing up, I'm sure.
NSYNC was a big deal.
That's right. Now, Dan, we're in our last minute here, so we don't have much time. But
Backstreet Boys are still better.
Backstreet Boys are still better. Briefly, let's go ahead and get this out, and then we can figure out what we're doing going forward in the rest of our show. Dan, go ahead and give us your social media channels one more time so people can find you online.
Sure, definitely. You can find me on social media at Facebook and Twitter at Citizen Analyst, and you can find all my writing and reports at Infowars.com and Newswars.com, and that's about it, yeah.
And I highly recommend you checking him out on both of those websites. Also, find him on Facebook. Just about everything he writes gets uploaded to his Facebook page. It's him holding an Infowars microphone. You'll recognize him right away from the show. Dan, thanks for coming on. We'll be right back. You're watching The Honest Media. Welcome back to The Honest Media. Again, Tom Pappert here with Craig Chrysler. And Craig, you were giving me a hard time in the break, calling me very dishonest, because it looks like we have Dan Lyman here with us for one more segment. But, you know, sometimes we plan these things on the fly. I'm not going to take more of Dan's time than he has available. So he's going to kind of pop in here and comment on the next thing we're going to talk about. And Craig, I'm blindsiding you with this, but I just found it, or Dan actually just sent it to us and said, you guys have got to see this. It's from yesterday. The title of the article is, "This is quite possibly the stupidest reaction to Trump's military parade." And Craig, I give you two guesses. What do you think they're going to try to do to protest Trump's parade?
Oh, Lord. Throw bottles of urine at people. Who knows?
They're going up in the Wayback Machine on this one. They're going to go stand in front of the tanks, Tiananmen Square style, because that worked out really well for that guy. I mean, but you know, to me, this just shows the level of just LARPing, live action role playing that these people are in right now.
I've been watching the cuck channels, and they're all just freaking out like this is some big, they're all calling him Kim Jong-il because of this.
Oh, really? I heard the term Hitlerian again. They had retired that for a while.
Which I haven't seen a good old-fashioned U.S. military parade since I don't know when, and I'd like to see one.
Well, that's kind of what I don't get. Dan, maybe you can help us out here. What is so bad about a military parade?
Trump's doing it, so it must be bad. And if he's Hitler, then it's the Nazi, regime marching in the streets essentially to them, I'm sure. So yeah, they want to lay down in front of these tanks. We have this radical greenie Arn Menconi. He's organizing and tweeting out. I'm sure it won't be him doing it, but he's found 50, nearly 50 Americans who have signed on to lay in front of the tanks if Trump brings out a military parade. We are not an empire drifting towards extinction. Will you join us? Here's a call to action. So obviously he's probably just stupid, college kids that have nothing to live for.
Roll over people with ease.
But Craig, they're communists. They're not. But
yeah,
so now this is the quote: "We would go to Washington D.C. if such a crazy and insane act occurred, and we would lay down in front of the tanks, just like the heroes and courageous students did in China in 1989." And there are so many different pieces of this that we could break down. First of all, the guy looks like your stereotypical cuck, like Glenn Beck if he had a little bit more hair and a little bit less chin. So there's that angle on it. But the other part is, if you want to ask about China, the overwhelming majority of Chinese people don't even know about Tiananmen Square. It didn't have the intended effect at all. Obviously it didn't, because China basically still has a dictatorship, and now we're, 30 years later?
A lot of the people in China don't know a lot about what happened in China.
Exactly. And now you would think, but of course these liberals don't think, but you would think that this alone is enough for them to realize, hey, we don't live in a totalitarian state here, because I'm going to talk about on social media breaking up a military parade run by the Trumpenfuhrer, and nobody's coming after this guy. Nobody's going to go shoot him. And you know what? If it did happen, nobody's going to take him to Gulag. And if it did actually happen, if they did actually do this ridiculous protest, I guarantee you, with how soft this country is, they would let it happen for probably 10 minutes, then they would get some officers to very gently pick them up and carry them away like the little babies they are.
I would like to see them trampled by horses.
And not only would they be carried away like little babies, they would be getting constant 24-hour, 7 days a week media coverage on every single network all over the internet. It would be the polar opposite as what happened in China. What kind of person, Dan, has this level of cognitive dissonance?
Well, I think they should just go full bore and voluntarily chuck themselves out of the military helicopters at the parade. That would be the really more interesting. But like you said, they would definitely be media darlings. Remember the guy who tried to rush the stage when Trump was speaking, and he ended up on CNN like hours later.
Shouldn't he been in jail?
Well, and then later the FBI did go and arrest him, or the Secret Service, and he's been questioned, and he's a felon. I don't think he had any jail time. I think they just gave him time served. But yeah, I mean that guy was a media superstar because he #resisted, and that's basically what this.
Resist a tank track with your body, please.
You do have to wonder how that act of resistance would work. It's totally
I'm personally
baffling.
looking forward to this. We ain't got to see a show off of the goods in a while.
Well, that's very true, and like I asked Dan a minute ago, I really don't get what is so bad about this idea of a military
we pay
parade.
for all this crap. I want to see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the largest, most powerful, most advanced military on the face of the planet. Our tax dollars, I mean, it is...
Yeah, let's have a look.
Exactly. Let's take a look at it. The majority of our tax dollars go to this thing. It's celebrating the troops and the military, which everybody loves the troops, even Democrats who, I'm not going to pretend to know
And
what's
we
in
got
their heart.
up North Korea's big parade they had, which I watched. It was
with the cardboard tanks.
Yeah,
that was the alleged
cardboard missiles.
The cardboard missiles. That's what it was. Dan,
yeah.
do you remember that the allegedly cardboard missiles in the North Korean military parade?
I do, and there's, I mean, I know they have a formidable military because that's all they spend on, but at the same time, there are just some things I look at and you feel like you're in like the 1950s watching MASH.
Right, right. That's basically what it looks like. Not much has changed. And of course, maybe we can bring it in the next segment where there is that great photo of the American soldier, South Korean soldier, and then the North Korean soldier in the middle. The North Korean soldier stands at about 4'9". I mean, just looks incredibly short and malnourished. Looks like they're about 12. Meanwhile,
that's what worms do to you.
That's what a terrible diet full of dirt, worms, and rice will do to you. Apparently, not a good time there in North Korea. There's some other articles I wanted to talk about today. I think I've got one here now. And Dan, your colleague Roger Stone has been saying this. I was trying to find some of the sources, but of course, combing through 2.5 years of Infowars videos isn't as easy as it sounds. There's some speculation now that the real author of the Russian dossier that, of course, the Nunes memo totally discredited may have been none other than Clinton advisor Sidney Blumenthal. Have you heard about this at all, Dan? Does that seem likely to you that the Clintons would commission this report and sell it to the FBI, basically?
I have heard that he may have been involved. There are some indicators. I've also heard that analysts have looked at it and said it looks like it was written by someone whose English was not their first language, because so it's very oddly written and some poor punctuation. I mean, at this point, anyone's guess is as good as the next, because it's so confusing. I was just reminded that this dossier, which I've gotten so sick of that word, I think we should just rename it. I don't know what, like a fiction storybook or whatever. But it was shown to Trump, like when he was at the beginning of his when he took office.
Right.
It was shown to him as an example of unverified, salacious information that is out there that could be used to blackmail him. So it was shown to him right off the bat, and Comey said it was unverified then. All of a sudden, it's the basis for this more than year-long Russian witch hunt. It's crazy.
It's all liberal bad.
Well, unfortunately, now it's interesting to watch them walk back and do a total 180. Prior to the Nunes memo released, it was the end of this memo was the end all. It was proof. It was all we needed to finally stump the Trump. And after this is released, well, the memo wasn't that important. Well, that's not the only proof of collusion that we have. It has been fascinating to watch them waffle on this so they can try to square that circle, so to speak. And you've got to think that with Trump now at 48% approval rates, with really an almost majority of the country saying they like this man as president, you've got to wonder exactly what is going on the left, how many people are still buying the propaganda. But Dan, I wanted to thank you again for coming on the show, and I wanted to give you one more opportunity to shill out your social media profile so people can find you online and support you as an independent journalist in the current year.
Sure. Facebook and Twitter at Citizen Analyst, and my reports go up every day at Infowars.com and Newswars.com.
Okay, and again, I suggest everybody follow him on Facebook as well as Twitter. He's a pretty active poster, and he'll keep you very well informed with what's going on with the world. Well, Dan, thanks again for coming on the show.
Cheers. Good to see you guys.
All right, we'll be right back on The Honest Media. We've got a little bit more ahead. Craig and I will be back in just a couple minutes. Welcome back to the Honest Media. I thank you for joining us this week. It's been a good show. This is our last few minutes together here. And Craig, we've got a lot that we want to get to. You know, we had Dan Lyman, and for most of the show today, I want to thank him again for coming on. But
too much stuff to cover in one show.
That's right. Too much stuff and not enough times. We need more hours a day or more hours a week, one of the two. Now, this is something, Craig, it's not really up our alley in terms of news, except maybe it is, because, Craig, I have not known in my life a lot of conservative. You are the one. A lot of conservative party animals. You are the one. I haven't known
a lot of conservative party animals.
You know a lot of people who drunkenly tell you they're conservative at parties. I don't know if that counts.
We party way better than liberals do. They just sit around and cry about stuff.
And probably do a lot of really depressing drugs. I can only imagine.
And they don't wear deodorant, and they're just not pleasant to be around.
That's very true. That's very true. But well, tell me what you think of this then, because my take is cynical. Drugs, alcohol, and suicides contribute to alarming drop in U.S. life expectancy. That is a strange headline to hear in the most developed, first world, beautiful, everything country ever.
It sounds like the normal thing. I don't know if that's anything new.
I mean, life expectancy has been basically going up. A couple years ago, it came out, it was going up.
Depends how you look at the numbers. Numbers I've seen, it's actually went down in the past 40 years due to how they figure in childhood mortality rate and everything.
Well, and it does also depend. White women, and ladies, you should listen to this. The life expectancy has been going down year after year ever since this whole 1970s second wave feminism and the globalists decided that every household needs to have two breadwinners.
They don't have the men to take care of them.
Well, and more than that. I mean, imagine
that
being
joke,
it was a joke, but there's something to it because imagine being a wife, and we all know that even in 2018, where everybody is allegedly an egalitarian, women still do the lion's share of the housework. Everybody knows this. This is, I don't think I'm being sexist here.
A good woman.
No, he is being sexist here. But I mean, it's well known that it is, men don't do their fair share of the inside housework. Men theoretically are fixing the roof and raking the leaves and taking care of the lawn. That doesn't always happen either. Let's be clear. A lot of women do that. But so now imagine being a woman who has a 2,000 square foot home and 3 kids to take care of, and then also a 40-hour-a-week job.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are saying that this decline in the life expectancy of white women has to do with this new idea that they need to be a breadwinner in the family, and they also need to be supermom. They also need to go to every single PTA meeting.
Thank you, IRS and Federal Reserve, for making all this possible.
Well, and thank you, President Johnson, for pushing it so hard, and thank you to GM, Ford, Chrysler, Kia, and the rest of them for making it seem like we all have to have 2 vehicles, if not 3 or 4, sitting outside in front of the house. You need at least 4. And you can get a couple of them from our friend right here, Craig Chrysler.
That's right.
But so this is just some of the numbers. In 2016, the life expectancy was 78.6 years, a decrease of 0.1 years from 2015. The quote is, "It may not sound like much, but the alarming story is not the amount of the decrease, but that the increase has ended." I mean, every year, overall, it's gone up and up and up, and now this is the first year.
Vaccines, the chemicals in the water, the food, the chemtrails, the gay frogs.
The gay frogs.
Where does it
definitely
end,
the gay frogs' fault. But
the gay frogs are a symptom of all this.
Sick of the globalists putting chemicals in the water and turning the frogs gay.
Yeah.
It's true, though. They do.
Thankfully, in Wichita, we don't have fluoride.
Thankfully, it's a little bit better here. We still have some of these other chemicals.
The age is still on the increase in Wichita due to the lack of fluoride.
Due to the lack of fluoride. Okay. Well, but now I want to get out there though, and if I can remember my train of thought here. Okay, here we go. It's this kind of nihilism that is very common with people your age and my age. I think that is really to blame. And nobody even understands nihilism because, of course, Nietzsche was saying it as a critique. It was not saying that this is this wonderful thing. It was a critique. And But we have this nihilism that goes on nowadays of life doesn't matter, you only live once,
Well,
we're only here for a little while.
We've been taught that and propagandized since I was a small child on MTV and everything else.
Don't save, live for today. You don't need to get married. You can wait till you're 30 or 40 or even 50 and get married. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Youth is eternal.
Don't care about anything.
Oh, yeah, caring
one of
is...
the most popular sayings, 0 F's given. you
Right.
know.
Yeah,
Don't care about nothing.
Exactly. You know, it's uncool to care, especially if it's, politics. It is possibly the least thing previous to Trump. It was possibly the least cool topic in the world to be like, oh yeah, I have a political TV show. I need my Poindexter glasses back, right? But I think that has to have something to do with it, because the article goes on to say that they are suggesting the possible causes are increased drug abuse, increased alcohol abuse,
Increased fornication.
But I would be shocked if that wasn't a factor.
Yeah.
But and they said suicides. Now, what is going to make you unhappy? Well, if your life is entirely built up in partying and you don't have real connections with people, if you have nothing to show for your life because you've spent the last 20 some odd years partying instead of building something for yourself and your family, if you have no kinds of connections because everybody else at some point wakes up out of the party mindset and goes and gets a job, I can see how this would be extremely depressing and either drive people into more drugs and alcohol or drive people to suicide.
Yeah. And women need more of the family environment and
we all do.
social things than men do. A man can just go to work and come home and be fine most of the time.
Sure.
A woman's not going to be happy with that.
Well, and it's different motivations.
And the girls I do know that do that, they're just miserable, and I don't want to be around them.
That's very
To
true.
tell you the truth.
I mean, Jordan Peterson talks about this, and women and agreeability. Most women are very agreeable people. They want everybody to be friends. They want to smooth things out. It's part of the reason they end up in HR, but it's also a reason why they are just by nature, extremely good at building homes, building families, being motherly. I mean, all of these things, these are womanly attributes, and it's not to say that they're good or bad, they're just feminine.
Yeah.
But and so you're right, when you take a woman and you put her into a workplace where it's cutthroat. I mean, most of the world is. You have to get ahead, and if that means that this other guy's going to go bankrupt, who cares, right?
Yeah, and back a couple hundred years ago, you might have had to kill a guy.
Right. You don't know.
Yeah.
Or your reputation gets ruined, you got to run out of town. So I
have a duel in the middle of the street.
Right.
Even a president.
That's true.
Yeah.
Good old Hickory, one of my favorites. Andrew Jackson. So I just wanted to get that out there. I hope folks are doing okay out there with this information, because it's really kind of shocking. And I encourage people, if you're unhappy, if you're taking a fistful of prescription pills every morning to try to make yourself a little bit happier, look at some lifestyle changes. Do you really need the second car? Do you really need the 4,500 square foot house? Is there a way that you could maybe re-gear your life to make it a little bit better? There's a guy named Stefan Molyneux who talks about this. I encourage everybody to look him up at Freedomain Radio online. And now, Craig, to close the show, it's a little bit old. It's actually from January, but we were talking about it before the break, and I wanted to bring it up again. Heritage Foundation, not an alt-right institution, says that Trump has done more than Reagan. Did you hear about that?
No, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. In his first year, it says Trump has done more than Reagan. This was released right around the time.
I think Trump did more in a week than Obama did in 8 years. So
more positive. I
Yeah.
meon, Obama did a lot of destruction in 8
Yeah,
years, not too much
he
construction.
did 200 years of destruction in 8 years.
But so this is what the Heritage Foundation says. Extremely conservative institution. Our viewers know him, I guarantee. Trump adopted 2/3, or about 64%, of the Heritage Agenda, meaning the administration copied and pasted 334 of the think tank's unique policy proposals. By comparison, the New York Times reports Reagan adopted just 49% of the Heritage Agenda, making 2017 a banner year for heritage, and I will add, for conservatives all across the country, and just people who aren't interested in seeing the size and scope of government continue to expand exponentially until it explodes. So,
sounds like we're on the right path.
there you go. We're on the right side, too. You're watching The Honest Media. Again, I hope you tune in to our broadcast of the KSGOP debate. You can find more information online. It'll be Saturday, February 17th, 6 p.m. We'll be broadcasting from the Hyatt. Going to be 4 hour long. Debate starts at 7:30 if you just want to get the good stuff. I'm Tom Pappert, here with Craig Chrysler. We'll see you again next week.